the summer camp that we hosted last year, we had 570 kids show up in a 6-week bike camp.
Is
A
that
lot.
is that 6 weeks of consecutive camp, or are those individual 1-week camps?
It was twice a week for 6 weeks. And
you had 570 kids.
Yeah. And so there was no registration. It was just come and go as you please type of thing.
Love that.
It was partnered with the city of Auburn's Parks and Rec department, and funded by a grant we got from King County. And so, yeah, the numbers were outrageous. Like when we first started, the goal was to get 100 kids, and we had 100 kids by the second day. And
BMX Breakthrough is bridging the gap from old school to new school, from tracks to manufacturers, from new riders to their local tracks, and it doesn't stop at racing, but the mission is to connect people with bikes. Join me, Jay Oaks, as I interview key people in the sport and in the industry that are involved in their local circles, in their communities, at their local tracks, and aiming to make a difference on a local level. You'll hear stories, marketing tips, failures, successes, and a way to make a difference in your local BMX community. Let's dive in as we kick off this next episode.
Let's get started with some conversation about cycle therapy. Brent, you have created this nonprofit, and there's so much to it. And in a moment, I will ask you a little bit more about you. Because I want to know where that came from. But cycle therapy as a whole, what is it that you guys do? And how is it that you are making an impact on the sport of BMX? So we'll start with, what is it that you guys do?
Okay, so as a nonprofit, we're getting kids out on bikes. That's cut and dry, right? We really focus on the mental health and youth mental health, and gear towards kids who are struggling with mental health, to get them out on bikes for a outlet and an alternate form of therapy. We're obviously not therapists, so we don't get to play in that game, but we focus on the kids that are struggling, but then we're also at the same time inclusive to anybody of all ages, to get them out on bikes for their mental health. So it's kind of a two-sided deal where we have a focus, but at the same time, we're not turning kids away that are ready to, just ride their bike. So, yeah, we're just, the overall goal is getting kids out on bikes. We have an emphasis on BMX racing because that's how the whole thing started, which I can get into. Overall, getting kids on bikes and then steering them towards at least attempting BMX racing. If a kid comes to us and says, hey, you know what, I really have an interest in mountain biking, then we will steer that child towards some of our contacts that are big into mountain biking. We've got Jeremy Bushnell, who works for Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance, that's more than happy to take kids on mountain bike trails. And we've been working a lot lately with Lane Van Ogle, who's obviously big into the mountain bike scene. So the more people we can get from all different disciplines to help us, then we can expand, right? We obviously have the knowledge of the BMX racing side of things, but so as we continue to grow, we'll be able to accommodate all kids on all two wheels, no matter what discipline they want to, go for. And that. Still with that, like, we're still going to try and push for the race side of things. So if a kid's more interested in mountain biking, we're going to introduce them to the trails and introduce them to the pump tracks where they can ride the dirt jumpers and the mountain bikes. But hey, why don't you try racing? Here's a guy who races downhill. Let's get you into it. So yeah, so that's kind of that's what we're doing right now. So
love that. Yeah, because I think the discipline of racing is so valuable for kids and adults alike, really. But you're talking about getting kids onto bikes and encouraging them in that direction. And I think that when there's that element of competition, whether it's on the BMX track or whether it's downhill mountain bike racing, it doesn't really matter. Or if it's kids running in the yard, I think that being able to have some of the confidence that comes from either winning or the dynamic of learning to lose, or learning how to win and then learning how to lose and then learning how to still be friends in the end, is really cool.
Oh yeah, that's one of the things when we started. My kids and I started racing during COVID, and that was the one thing I noticed right away was win or lose, the kids cross the finish line, start holding out their fist and fist bumping, and like as you start getting more into the sport, and there's all these teams and everyone's wearing different jerseys, but yet they're all hanging out together, and the kids don't care what jersey they're wearing, and they just want to hang out with their friends. And and even looking back now at when I was a kid and looking through the BMX Plus magazine as a kid and wishing I was racing BMX bikes, and like there was always photos of kids off the track or even the pros at the time, and every one of them had a different jersey on. They didn't, it wasn't like, oh, here's one team and here's another team and there's a big divide. So it's pretty awesome.
Yeah. Well, even that dynamic, I was just thinking of Oliver raced his last 5 novice race the other day because he just turned 6. And so as he was racing with these kids, there was one that he had beat for I think the first 2 motos. And then his dad, we were up getting ready to go on the gate, and I hear his dad telling him, and he goes, okay, get a good start on this one. And they came out of the gate, and this kid got the jump on him and beat him to the first corner. And it is funny and also a really cool dynamic to watch as a dad. And I was like filled with joy for this kid that beat my son out of the gate and to the first corner. And I looked at his dad and I was like, you told him to get a good start. He got a good start. Yeah. And it's so cool. And then him and Oliver were pushing and Oliver got around him. And, but anyway, it's just that dynamic of like racing and wanting to encourage others to be better, even if that's not your own kid or if that's not just you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. The camaraderie in this sport is pretty awesome. Like that was probably one of the main things that caught me off guard when we started was, I come from a wrestling background where you walk into any wrestling room, whether it's, practice or a tournament, and you can tell just from looking that, the top elite kids and their parents are over in the corner, not talking to other parents. And this sport, like when we first started, there was kids with, district #1 plates and national #1 plates talking to the kids that are brand new with paper plates. And there was never like oh my God, that's the cool kid and he's over by himself. Like everyone interacts, everyone helps out. And at the end of the day, they're just all out there to ride bikes. So
yeah. I think the first time that you and I met was at one of the state races at Lincoln Park, and you and I were on the gate together. We didn't have complete classes, and so we ended up racing together. And the rhythm section was throwing me, and so you and I in staging, we were talking, and I was asking you like, how are you getting through that rhythm section? And it's like the competition is, you want to win, but at the same time, you also want to have a good race. And so the faster they are, the faster you're going to be pushed to be, which is cool.
Yeah, no. And it's, especially for, our age, like once you're on the track, once the gate drops, it's like, you want to win, but, but outside of that, it's all about like pushing each other and giving each other tips. And obviously there's, the one-off people, but that's, pretty far and few between. So
Quick detour to one of our gold level sponsors, Luminex Neon, who has partnered with us to help accomplish the mission here at BMX Breakthrough. We're so grateful for their opportunity. And there's a special place, a near and dear place in my heart for neon, all things neon, whether that's on paper, whether it's shoes, whether it is a sign in a living room or a garage space, it doesn't matter. I love neon, always have, probably always will. And so neon signs create a unique statement piece. So if you're looking for that for your bike shop, for your garage, for your workspace, maybe it's for your living room, Luminex Neon offers exactly what you need. So with unparalleled craftsmanship and endless design possibilities, Luminex Neon is your go-to for brightening up any space. You can follow the link in the description and use our promo code BMX Breakthrough 10 in order to get 10% off of your order and to explore everything that Luminex Neon has to offer.
So talking about the camaraderie and then going back to what you had said, you talked about the mental wellness and the mental health side of cycle therapy, and regardless of where somebody's at in this journey, and whether they've got a little bit more on their plate or whether it's just coming to ride bikes, because regardless of how healthy you feel like you are, being out in the fresh air and just doing something physically active is incredibly helpful to anybody's well-being. So what does that look like for psychotherapy as a whole, and what are you being energized by as you're seeing some of these things happening?
So I've noticed a lot with myself. Like, I personally never struggled with any, mental health. But now that I'm riding my bike all the time and racing, and now it's like, and now that we're getting into the nonprofit side of things, and pushing the mental health, now I'm going, oh man, now I see having a bad day, let me go get on my bike, and instantly, changes my whole personality and whole mindset, right? But on the focus for mental health and the kids who actually are struggling, like we've helped kids who, whether they struggle with autism or ADHD or and immediately you put them on a bike and all their focus goes right to the riding the bike, instant smile on their face, no care in the world type of thing. And it's changed a lot of kids that we've, just from this short time that we've been doing this. The summer camp that we hosted last year, we had 570 kids show up in a 6-week bike camp.
Is that 6 weeks of consecutive camp, or are those individual 1-week camps?
It was twice a week for 6 weeks. And
you had 570 kids.
Yeah. And so there was no registration. It was just come and go as you please type of thing.
Love that.
It was partnered with the city of Auburn's Parks and Rec department, and funded by a grant we got from King County. And so, yeah, the numbers were outrageous. Like, when we first started, the goal was to get 100 kids, and we had 100 kids by the second day. And it was, and so a lot of those kids come from the city of Auburn, and the lower income families, as well as I noticed a lot of not behavioral issues, but just the focus, whether it was an ADHD thing, or I'm like, not here to diagnose, but just from my perspective, and we were able to get them on bikes, teach a lot of the kids. I'd say we probably taught 50 kids how to pedal, let alone all the different skills involved with riding bikes. And every one of them was coming back for more and wanted more, and was upset when it was the 3-hour mark and we're getting ready to take the bikes away and send them back home type of thing. So
that's so cool.
A lot of my own perspective, a lot of improvements that cycling has on kids' mental health. And then not to mention all the research I've read and the studies I've read about from different colleges that have done the actual clinical studies, and that there is proven facts that cycling does help with youth mental well-being. So we're going for it.
And the physical activity side of things is, you mentioned ADHD, and there is something to be said for whether a kid has ADHD or whether they're hyper, or whether it's just I've got a 6-year-old son and he's got a ton of energy. And so just the act of getting out there and just spinning and spinning their legs and being out there on the bike and smiling uses muscles.
Absolutely.
And so they go, just the last episode that India and I did is we talked about Oliver's behavior is better when he goes racing just once a week. And and it's just, kids need to find a positive way to get their energy out. So the fact that you had 570 kids in that 6-week period is just incredible.
Yeah. So we got a month till our second year of the summer camp. We're starting it again, July 9th. And so we're crossing our fingers that we get the same amount. We have 3 times as many bikes now, so we should, we'll be able to accommodate even more. So we're excited.
So July 9th, we'll take a quick moment to give a commercial for this. Okay, so July 9th, give us the rest of the details.
So July 9th through August 16th, Tuesdays and Thursdays in Auburn at the Cedar Lanes Park. And it's from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m.
Awesome.
So timing wise kind of sucks for the BMX racers, because that's right when gate practice and racing is for SeaTac, which is one of our our main home tracks. But we're doing good things. So my kids specifically are have committed to helping out with the camp for the whole 6 weeks. So they're sacrificing racing and track time to do good things, and getting involved with the nonprofit. And especially, I have a 16-year-old who, luckily for him, he's not working yet. But he's pretty excited to help out, and, just add the assisting a nonprofit to his resume for when he does actually get a job. So trying to push him to do more. So, but
That's great.
So we're between us and the city of Auburn Parks and Rec. They have an awesome bike program, and so we've partnered together, not only for this summer camp, but we also help with their after school program, which is also Tuesdays and Thursdays from about 3:30 to 5:30. And there's rain or shine, there's 50 kids a day that show up to that. And so we're helping with the pump track and just all different bicycle skills. So
so cool.
And then one of the things that this after school program is doing is it's a public park. So that Evergreen Mountain Bike Alliance built some trails and some tabletops and drop zone and a few different things. But being that it's a public park, non-cyclists are there, and it's a neighborhood park. So lots of, water bottles and garbage and needles and everything else that gets left in the park. And so this group of 50 kids puts on gloves and grabs the garbage, tong, the 4-foot long tongs and garbage bags, and we go and do a full walk through the park and clean the park up. And so not just riding bikes, but also teaching these kids at a young age to take care of not only the park, but more importantly, the riding trails that they're going to ride on. And if they can keep good maintenance on the park that they're going to ride at, they're going to keep pushing other kids that are riding. Hey, don't litter, and don't do this and don't do that. So kind of teaches
cool.
different things.
I love that.
We're
I want
And
to,
then, yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
real quick, I want to jump in and I want to say that if you are in the Auburn, Washington area and you are able to help out with that, because Brent, you were saying that your kids are going to be helping out. And I remember them being out there last year and helping out and being a part of that. And yes, it interferes with some time that you could have on the track. But because we are advocating for getting new riders to the track, um, part of this is not only helping kids to get on bikes, but if you can get another, say as a result of these camps, you're able to bring another 10, 15, 20, hopefully 50 kids into the sport of BMX that add and create larger classes for those that are racing.
Yeah.
You know, and it gives you the opportunity. So if you're listening to this and you and your child race together, and I mean, you have the opportunity to go out and help out with this camp, and then maybe you connect with kids and parents, and you're able to encourage them to be to the track. As you know, as we all know, one of the hardest things about racing is when you don't have a class and you get lumped in. And, you know, for me, one of the things that I end up doing a lot is I'll end up racing 17 to 20 experts or 25-year-old experts, and they're a whole lot faster than I am. And that's totally fine, but it's way more fun when you get to race against people your age and your skill level. And so one step further than just in the way of going out and supporting the camp is also, okay, well, for the benefit of the sport, man, I would love to be out there. And so anyway, the way that your kids are excited to help out, even though it takes them off the track for a few races, is really cool.
Yeah, no, and kind of going back to what you're saying about, you know, the classes and the mixing of classes. For you and I, it's not that big of a deal, right? We already have the competitiveness inside of us. We can turn it on and off when the gate drops. But if you put that into a perspective for let's say a 7, 8, 9-year-old kid who's just coming out and they have to race, you know, it's a small moto night and they have to race, you know,
12-year-olds,
intermediate experts or 12-year-olds, or, you know, I've raced some of these, you know, cruiser classes where I've raced a 7-year-old, you know, on cruiser, and it's like, for a new kid, that's very discouraging. Yeah. You know, and so there's good and bad for it. I know one of the things that I always talk about is this is the only sport that I know of where you don't just participate with your kids, but you can actually compete with your kids. You know, going back to like wrestling, right? Like I could go and coach my kids' wrestling team or roll around on the mat with my kids, but when it comes to actually competing, you're not getting to compete with that. And so I've actually, you know, went head to head with my 16-year-old kid on the track, and for me at 42, I'm not letting him win, because eventually there's going to be a day where he does win, and then there's no turning back. So I'm going to get him until I can't. So
let's be honest. How much does he push you right now?
Oh, he's getting there. He's faster and faster. So he's one win away from expert. So he's turning it on.
Yeah.
But yeah, going back to that with getting more kids into the sport, one of the things that we just started is a scholarship program, which we're eventually going to start doing some grant requests to help fund this scholarship program. We, out of all those kids that I talked about from the last year's summer camp, plus all the kids that I've helped out in the 2 different after school programs, most can't afford it. And when you start talking about, you know, the cost of the bike, the cost of the helmet, the cost of the jersey and pants, the $80 a year membership, the $15 a time to race, for a family that can't afford it, that's a big ask. And so we're going to start offering scholarships where we'll take care of all that stuff. We'll let the kid borrow a bike. We'll let him borrow a full face helmet. And so one kid that I met through the after school program, a little 9-year-old kid, showed dedication to the riding his bike. He's on the pump track like 4 hours every day. He was asking about racing. So we got him connected with a bike and a helmet, brought him out to the track on Friday for his first race. And it was, they took advantage of the free trial race. So he didn't need his membership. He raced his own class, which is, sometimes rare for, single point races, and beat everybody by like a straight and a half. So he won all three laps his first time, and now he's hooked. He's going to race his second race on Saturday, and we're going to start by providing him with 25 free races. That should get him, that's about once a week for pretty much the whole outdoor season up here. And then kind of go from there. And so taken just from what we saw from him, if we can get grant money to help fund this scholarship program, we can help out a lot of kids. And so that's kind of what we're changing our focus to. Now that we've raised a bunch of money for bikes and helmets and all that inventory stuff, now we can start raising money to help kids get on bikes and out onto the track. So
that is so cool. Okay, so as a quick tangent rabbit trail from that, you were talking about this kid who came out and was riding, and he had spent all this time. He had spent 3-4 hours a day at the pump track just wanting to ride his bike. One, the level of joy that this kid has found in riding his bike. Right. Two, coming out his first race and beating his class that's a confidence builder. It really is. And so, whether or not this kid, it's so easy to be like, okay, we need to push this kid, forever to work really hard to become pro and all that. We're not even talking about that. This kid has found something that he really enjoys. He's found something that he's good at, which builds confidence. And so he goes to school and he feels a little bit more confident in who he is as a person because he has something. And I don't know his story. I don't know if maybe he's great at all the other sports too. Maybe he just is naturally good, but regardless, for you to be able to come in and set up this scholarship program, to be able to help him out, and then just the level of skill that he has acquired from being at the pump track, which is so valuable. That's a cool story.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. We're excited to keep getting him out to the track, and then again being able to do this with more kids as we once we can and we're able to do so, then that discussion with the parents of these kids that come to the summer camp or just reach out to us through our website that are looking to get their kids out on bikes, like there'll no longer be that discussion of the monetary part. And that's what's holding a lot of kids out. I mean, like I said, I spoke to probably 50 different parents last summer, and not a single one of them brought their kids out to the track other than one family who the daughter had befriended my daughter. So she just wanted to come out and watch her race. But other than that, no other kid showed up at the track. And with those numbers, there should have been at least 20 kids saying, okay, I'm going to try this out. But financially, they're not able to. So the conversation ends right there. And so, like I said, right, we've got 50 race bikes that we can, lend out and loan out and bring to the track to let kids try riding. And eventually through some scholarship money, we'll be able to, either replenish our inventory and give a kid a used bike, or just flat out buy a brand new bike for a kid. And so us partnering with some good brands, we're able to actually do it without spending every penny we have. So
it's really cool. So I want to ask you from there, how is it, you mentioned getting into BMX racing during COVID, and you mentioned looking at the magazines when you were younger. So what is your history and your background with BMX?
So as a kid, I rode my bike. I mean, like, around the neighborhood and all that. I never, and again, going back to the BMX Plus magazine, like reading the magazine and living in Kent and reading that there was a big national race in Sumner, Washington, and knowing that's like at the time like a 15-minute drive, never put two and two together that that was something that we could do. Fast forwarding to now and talking to some kids I grew up with, they're like, yeah, I raced as a kid. It's like, why didn't you ever talk about it? Like I never knew any of my friends that raced when they were kids, yet now they all tell me that they raced. So I just never knew about that it was an option. Plus, into all the other sports growing up as well. So we were busy. But yeah, always a fan of BMX bikes, and had nice race bikes as a kid, just didn't know I could race them. So then COVID happened, had to pull the kids off the wrestling mat, and at the time my kids were like 12, 8, and 5, and none of them knew how to ride bikes. And so knowing that they were going to be sitting home, I was like, all right, let's go get some bikes. Went and just bought, inexpensive bikes off of Craigslist, offer up type of thing, and got them all riding bikes. And I bought myself a bike that I had as a kid, which was a 95 Mongoose, and just riding around the neighborhood. And then we went down to the Sumner track, River Valley, and it was open, and we were riding it, and started talking to different people at the track. And within weeks of going down to the track, signed my boys up for racing over at Peninsula Indoor. And within 2 weeks of them racing, I was like, I could do this, and signed up, raced the Mongoose for a couple weeks. And then once I realized that now I'm into it, I bought myself an actual, modern race bike. And then 4 months later, my daughter decided she wanted to try it out, and that's all she wrote. Now we're hooked. That's all we do every weekend. And
at this moment, I'm going to interrupt our current interview, briefly to give a special shout out and thank you to our sponsors that have backed us financially in this project, in our mission, and give them a huge thank you. So at our gold level, we have Luminex Neon and Marketing Breakthrough. At our silver level, we have Sound Cedar Lumber and Bicycle Thieves. And at our bronze level, we have Pro Start Gates and Justin Shepard, Title Examiner. Thank you so much for your support. Thank you for backing us. If you are looking for help with any project that you're working on, if you're looking for some cool things to do, go ahead and check out the links to their websites in our description, and go ahead and visit them, show them some love. We are so appreciative for their support. And if you are interested in getting involved in a local track, helping out, or sponsoring a local track, sponsoring the BMX Breakthrough project as a whole, please reach out at j@bmxbreakthrough.com. You can also go to our website and find out some of the needs of tracks and some of the things that we are working on at bmxbreakthrough.com. Once again, thank you so much for your support. Let's dive back into this conversation.
And so that's how that started. My kids stopped doing anything else sports wise. All they want to do is ride their bikes. All they want to do is race. I keep pushing to try other things, but they're hooked.
Wow.
And so with that, that's kind of how the whole cycle therapy came about, was a friend of mine, we started wearing jerseys that had the Cycle Therapy Bike Shop logo on them, as just kind of like a fun thing to do, because we were connected to a friend, Rick, who owns the bike shop, and that quickly led to, oh, let's actually start a race team. And so we were, kind of like a bike shop team without the, but all kind of small, right? We had 3 families. That led to 6 families. And then the following year, we decided to actually make it a real team and start contacting sponsors or potential sponsors. One of which told us that if we wanted money to help out with jerseys and pants and stuff like that, then we had to be a 501c3 nonprofit, which is how we became a nonprofit. It was driven by one of our sponsors who told us, they couldn't just hand us $1,000. We actually had to be a nonprofit. So that's how we started. Went through all the paperwork, got established as a 501c3, and we were just a race team that was going to raise money to help support racing. And that lasted about 4 months, and it just didn't sit well with me, knowing that all the families that were part of our team all had good paying jobs, and we didn't need any financial assistance with the racing. So one night at work, about 2:30, 3 in the morning, just kind of dawned on me, why are we not doing something good with the fact that we have a nonprofit? Let's do something big. And looked down, I was wearing a Cycle Therapy sweatshirt, and I'm like, why are we not using our name to do something good with the nonprofit? And it just clicked. And now we're focusing on mental health, and we changed the whole dynamic of the nonprofit, of our team. Everything is focus on mental health, push cycling, for kids to get, feel right. And it's going good. And so now we're, the race team is under the nonprofit, but at the same time, they're completely separate in regards to money. So any sponsorship money we get for team sponsors that are going to have their logo on our jersey, that money is specific to the team. Any nonprofit donations goes directly to the nonprofit. And we're full volunteer based and ran nonprofit. None of us take compensation. None of us, there's no financial gain for us. It's every penny donated gets put right back into, getting more bikes, helmets, and stuff for the kids. So pretty awesome.
That's great. And you guys have, you were talking about equipment earlier. So what is it all that you guys have now? Because you've been collecting bikes and you've been collecting helmets for the program as a whole. So you have quite the collection at this point.
Yeah. So we partnered with 888 helmets for like the skateboard style, bike, skateboard, or skate park half shell helmets. Right. I think we've bought close to 100 helmets. I currently have 70 of them sitting in my garage. We passed out a lot last summer. We partnered with System Cycle, and so now we have, I think, 45 DK race bikes, and then we have a couple of DK mountain bikes and airborne dirt jumpers, and then a handful of park bikes. And then I think like 8 to 10 balance bikes. So our trailer's full of DK bikes. And then Fly Racing sponsors both the nonprofit and the race team. So we have a handful of full face helmets, and that we we let the kids at our summer camps and our group rides and stuff wear the half shell helmets, and then any of the kids that want to transition to BMX racing, we let them borrow a fly helmet, and so yeah, so DK bikes and fly helmets and 888 helmets, those are kind of our big sponsors / partners. And then some of our other sponsors are obviously Cycle Therapy Bike Shop, and then My Medic, which supplies us with first aid kits and bandages galore. I mean, we have thousands of bandages on hand, ready to, every time there's a scrape and cut. And so,
which is a good thing to have.
Our inventory is pretty full now. We got, like I said, we purchased through some of the grant money we received last summer. We were able to buy a 16-foot cargo trailer. And so eventually we'll have that thing wrapped with Cycle Therapy, and whatever sponsors want to help fund that wrap, because that's an expensive feat in itself. But yeah, so anytime when summer camp starts, we'll be ready to go.
That's cool. Well, you guys have done a really good job with your branding of your jerseys and of the whole Cycle Therapy program. I think for starters, I fell in love with the checkerboard sleeve, which we stole from you.
Yeah, and Vans and every other company that has checkers.
Yeah, I think you and I had a conversation about it, and you're like, well, it's not our thing. We didn't invent checkerboard. But I liked your checkerboard sleeve, and it stood out really well. And I had a chance to look at your jerseys quite a bit, because while we were up in Washington, I spent a lot of time racing against Mark Shaw. And so I spent a lot of time behind him. So I got to see how good your jerseys looked. And anyway, but the way that you guys have done that and continued using that checkerboard, even through the different variations of your jerseys, and the way that the branding has changed and evolved a little bit, but as a whole, you guys will be out on the track, and you're very well known just because of the colors that you are and the styling. And it is cool to see the different ages and generations of riders that are represented out on that track, which is really fun. So
yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, I'm anal about our jerseys and making sure that every rider on our team wears the same jersey and pants, and and there's no alternate options. This is what you're going to wear, because this is what our sponsors have paid for, type of thing. And so even though like last year we were all black jerseys with the black and white checkers, this year we're kind of like a gray and black faded jersey, just solely out of support for our sponsors. Last year we had a sponsor on our jersey that didn't continue. This year we have a new sponsor. So just out of respect for them, we don't allow last year's jerseys to be worn, because we're not going to highlight a company that doesn't sponsor us anymore, and we're not going to out the company who is sponsoring us, type of thing. So but yeah, I like our look, and we're gonna keep at it. And personally, there's multiple teams that rock the checkers, and I love it. I support it, and we all haggle with each other about it, but it's all in fun. So, because checkerboard has been part of racing since the first race, 1,000 years ago, type of thing. So
as you're watching, you mentioned your kids earlier, and you mentioned them enjoying racing, and then them being a part of camps and enjoying that. I wanted to ask you, what are you seeing your kids getting out of the cycle therapy side? Because when you're doing the nonprofit side, it's not just you. I know that your kids are helping out and a big part of that. So what are you watching as far as like benefits that they're gaining.
I know for my kids, personally, like if one of them's having a bad day, you know, at the house and they're not on their bike, you know, I kind of, you know, because of our nonprofit now, I'm like, hey, get on your bike, go ride around the neighborhood for a little bit. Like, I don't care if you're practicing for a race or let's just go down to the park and ride the pump track. Just, we need to get on our bikes. I usually see almost instant, you know, engagement and instant gratification that now they're on their bike and now your mind's right. Obviously with the racing side of things, you see the ups and downs as they win and lose, but you know, when they're winning, they're always happy. When they're losing, they're not. But then, you know, we just remind them that, hey, you're on your bike. That's all that matters. So, and then the fact that they're helping with it, they take pride in knowing that they're helping these kids. Whether it's kids who we've had like one-on-one clinics where me and Cooper, my 12-year-old, have gone and met a parent and a kid just to let them ride their bike. And you know, whether we take the pedals off because they're not able to, you know, they're big enough to be on a pro size BMX bike, but they can't pedal. So we take the cranks off or take the pedals off and let them just ride. And they and my kids will participate and actually be hands-on. And so that in itself is pretty, you know, like encouraging, and it's enough for me to be satisfied knowing that they're not just doing it because dad tells them to. So
that's fun. It's fun to watch them gain something out of it, and being able to be committed not only to racing as a whole, but even to being able to help other kids get on bikes is a really valuable thing. So
yeah. And then Kyle, who I started this whole journey with, his kids are 5 or 6 and 3, and they're just about the age where they're going to start kind of getting more hands-on, especially Jack, who's 6, and then Lauren and her son Wyatt, he's also 6. Like they're getting to that age where now they're not just there because we're there. They're actually, you know, giving pointers, and, you know, the pointers don't always actually, you know, help, but they're 6, right? So just knowing that they're out there to do good and not just out there because, oh, mom and dad are having to go help a bunch of kids, so I'm gonna tag along. Like they're actually getting involved. So that in itself is, you know, satisfying. So
yeah, that's awesome. Well, Brent, as somebody who's raced, I wanted to ask you, what has been one of the most fun or memorable moments for you in your racing journey?
Mine personally is probably getting hurt at 40 years old and, you know, and being able to get right back to it and not be discouraged. Cause you know, at the end of the day, as much as I love racing BMX bikes, I'm doing it because my kids are. If my kids turned around tomorrow and said, we don't want to race anymore, obviously I'm not going to stop the psychotherapy nonprofit. I'm going to keep doing everything we're doing. But if my kids aren't racing, I'm not racing. That's the whole reason I started this. If they turn around tomorrow and say, hey, Dad, we don't want to go to racing tomorrow. Okay, I guess we're not going, because I'm doing it for them. And so if I can lead by example and say, okay, look, I lost today, but I'm going back out there and I'm going to try my hardest again. Or I crashed and I'm getting back up and I'm going to finish my lap, or I'm going to go back out and I'm hurt, but I'm not injured. Hopefully that sends the message to them that, okay, I can do the same thing. That plus the fact that I've actually been able to race against my kids, because some of the local racing is smaller, and probably the most enjoyment I've ever had when it's like we're all doing it together.
I love that. Yeah, and I can see that. What is one of your most fond memories as from the viewpoint of a dad watching his kids race?
Probably the same kind of along the same lines, like watching them, because the fact, as you know, like as long as there's enough kids in your age group, you're only racing your own age and your own proficiency. And so all the kids for the most part are going to be competitive with each other. Obviously there's always the random standout that's, 6 bike lanes ahead of everybody else. But watching them compete, watching them, get frustrated when they lose, figuring out what happened, and then going back out there and doing it again. There's, obviously there's been times where it's like you got to convince them to get back out there, but now that they've been doing it a while, it's like they overcome. Hey, look at this video. You didn't pedal the whole second straight. That's why you lost. Let's go back out there and try again, pedaling the second straight and see how much it changes. And so seeing them grow with the sport and still wanting to do it after 4 years, and they're still diehard racers. They want to race I mean, for the most part, we're racing 2 to 3 times a week all summer. We'll usually pick like a 2-week span. We'll try and race 6 or 7 days a week just to do it. Hurts the bank account, but it's something that we get to all do together. And eventually they're not going to want to ride in the car with dad and go on weekend trips racing, or if and when my kid ever gets his license, he'll drive himself. And so just enjoying all those moments with the kids where that most kids and families aren't experiencing, because the sport of let's just say baseball or football or anything else, where dad's taking them to the field, and then dad goes to the stands and the kid goes to the field, and when it's over they get in the car and they go home. Where with the BMX, we're doing it together, we're standing there together, we're hanging out together, we're riding the practice laps together, and then when we get home, it's like, hey, guess what, I'm going inside, you're unloading the bikes. You're so yeah, it's fun, man. I love it.
That's cool. Yeah, I like that dynamic, and there's nothing quite like being able to stand alongside your kids, or be on the gate with them, and being able to race my kids, and they'll be up on the gate, they want to race, and so I'll just do a pump lap, and I can go a little bit slower, let them get ahead, and then in the rhythm section, that's usually where I can pump a little bit more, and I can gain some speed in there. But it is really cool watching my kids, and whether or not they win, whether or not I win, like the joy on their face to be able to ride their bike next to their dad is absolutely incredible. And then another generation being my dad, and watching them race with, they call him G-Paw, but watching them get to race with G-Paw and beat him, or dive down underneath him in a corner or whatever, is really fun, because it's a different dynamic than a lot of other sports.
Yeah, and the kids, and I'm sure the kids love the fact that they get to ride with dad, but they don't understand what our thoughts are, and how it's that much larger that we get to ride with them. And so then put it into perspective for you and your dad, like same thing, you probably enjoy riding with your dad, but little do you know it's probably the best thing that you guys have ever done together. So it's pretty cool.
It is. Yeah, it's a phenomenal sport. So I love hearing what you're doing for other kids, for the sport as a whole, getting kids on bikes, the program that you're working to continue getting launched, that you've already started, but providing scholarships for kids to be able to race. As far as that scholarship system goes, just so people know right now, is there like a nomination form for that, or how are you selecting these kids, and what do you need in order to support that program?
Right now, as it just because we've just done it with one kid and it's just getting started. We're actually Friday is when I'm actually going to go and pay for his membership.
Okay.
So it's just starting out as fresh. I mean, this is something that we thought about like 3 weeks ago. And so our fast forward, our goal is to have an application process where people can fill it out. And we haven't figured out our plan of how we're gonna, how we're gonna do it. We're gonna obviously be inclusive. It's not gonna be just does your kid have, any struggles with any mental health? It's gonna be inclusive to kids that want to ride bikes. We have to, talk with our attorney to figure out like what we're legally allowed to ask for, whether it's, the household income or how to verify that. Because we don't, at the end of the day, we want to help all kids, right? But we don't want to use that scholarship money for a kid whose parents just don't feel like paying for it. But at the same time, it's not the kid's fault. So it's like we have to. We're going to start probably by a case basis. However, as we start getting grant money for this, then we obviously are going to have to be, more formal and get our, a standard operating procedure of how we approve these applications. And the outdoor season up here, as you know, is usually from, mid-May to mid-October, which is about 25 weeks. If we, just to kind of put that into perspective, an $80 membership and 1 race a week for 25 weeks comes out to be like $400. So if we can get $5,000 in from a grant, that could easily help 10 kids get out to the track. Now that's 10 more kids to add more, more kids on the track, more motos, more more move ups, more racing.
So this week you're working on the legality side of that, and you're working on finalizing that process. But would it be safe to say that if somebody's listening and they have a business or they know a business that is willing to sponsor, $500 donations would cover a kid for an entire season?
For a whole 6 months.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
$500 donations.
yeah.
Or more. You don't have to stop at 500.
I'll never turn somebody down. And I mean, a friend of mine who I met through racing, I mean, even just the other day, we want to be able to provide these kids that we're going to help out with fly jerseys and fly pants. Obviously I want to stay loyal to the fly because they obviously help us out. But I put out a post on Facebook saying, hey, does anybody have, pre-owned, used, lightly used, pants, because they're hard to find, and willing to pay for them. And a friend of mine that met through racing who lives in Idaho, he just commented and said, I'll send you a couple free, brand new pairs. Just give me your address and I'll send it. So it's like,
wow,
the community is pretty awesome and willing to help out, and and we're grateful for it. And we just want to pass it on to the kids that don't have the same access that our own kids have. And so
yeah. Which is great. And getting kids into that sport, because you never know what is going to transpire that is going to help those kids. And I know a lot of people listening, like people that are listening to this, they have the story of their bike being a pivotal part of their life in some way, whether it was a safe place or it was a way to escape reality, or it was a way to build up that confidence and that courage, or adapt and overcome. And anyway, whatever it is, like, we know that bikes play a big part in our story, so we don't know exactly what's going to happen as a result of this, but being able to help those kids get onto bikes absolutely could be a part of changing their life for the better.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've done a pretty good job with the race team, getting sponsorships, and from the logos on the jerseys and the number plates to the Instagram shout outs and all that kind of stuff. But definitely have struggled with getting sponsors and donations for the nonprofit, which at the end of the day, that's the more important side of it, because that's where we want the money being spent. And so any help we can get financially, that'd be great. So
awesome. Well, Brent, thank you so much. I appreciate getting to hear more of the story, getting to have a conversation with you, and hearing more about cycle therapy and how we can, how people can be a part of that mission. And love watching what you're doing, and so grateful for the investment that you're making into kids and getting kids on bikes. So
thank you. I appreciate you inviting me on. It's been great.
Right on. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good, man. Thank you.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode. It is because of people like you and our sponsors who make this whole thing possible, because they have a desire to see the sport grow. If you would like to get involved in the mission of BMX Breakthrough, you can start by going to your local track, find a way to volunteer, help out, and serve there. Or you can go to our website, bmxbreakthrough.com, in order to donate, find out about sponsorship, or learn more.